In today's video, we're taking a look at some of the trade talk around the NHL, which right now kind of revolves around some of the top unsigned RFAs. We're looking at guys like Jacob Pelletier out of Calgary. There's also a signed RFA in Oliver Wahlstrom with the New York Islanders, likely looking for a fresh start, has not been moved as of yet. Of course, we have Nick Robertson as well. We have a few more trade ideas where he could end up, which could include a possibility of going to Washington or maybe even Vegas. Plus, we have some big rumors from Elliotte Friedman around the Anaheim Ducks and some of the things they tried to do this offseason, which may give us a glimpse of what they do moving forward. Plus, we have some updates on the Edmonton Oilers and Jeremy Swayman. A lot more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a fair bit to talk about here tonight. Before we jump into the trade talk and the rumors around some of the young RFAs around the NHL, I do want to take a look at some of the additional rumors here that came from Elliotte Friedman's podcast. As I mentioned over the past couple of days, Elliott's latest podcast, the first edition of it, which came out on Friday, 2.5 hours long. They covered all 32 teams and went through a ton of stuff. So obviously, like I said, a lot of the information I was going to gradually kind of be looking at here over a few days' time. But the Anaheim Ducks are an interesting team. According to Elliotte, he feels that the Anaheim Ducks actually tried to make some big moves in free agency, but came up short. He says that he feels the Ducks went pretty hard after top UFAs like Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. So that kind of makes you wonder, if they're really trying to add some top veteran help to go along with the top youth to really take things a step forward and really make this team more competitive. It might, knowing what they tried to do and unfortunately didn't work out, but it kind of gives us a glimpse into what they may continue to try to do and what we may see from them throughout this year or into next offseason. As I talked about in the GM Report Card series, when I did the Ducks video, I said for Pat Verbeek that the team has had a lot of first-round picks, 10 of them in the last 6 years. They've accumulated a lot of young talent, and in my opinion, considering how long they've been rebuilding, that they should be further along, and that I'm surprised we haven't seen at least a couple of moves to really add and insulate some top other talent to kind of mesh with these top young players. And apparently, they kind of were working on that. I just didn't know. So obviously Stamkos and Marchessault would have been huge for them, clearly. Steven Stamkos, I know his old teammate, Alex Killorn, went and signed in Anaheim after his time with the Lightning came to a close. I do remember seeing an interview with him earlier before free agency and was asked, if it worked out that Stamkos hit the market, would he be pushing for the Ducks to sign him? And he said absolutely he would, and clearly they were. I mean, obviously, Pat Verbeek was not necessarily needing a nudge from him to do that, but still, it might give us an indication here that we might see some more moves or attempted moves from this franchise. Looking ahead to next offseason, there's some really interesting names that could hit the free agent market next year. I know one of the top ones right now, just amongst all the unsigned players, is Mitch Marner. I know Draisaitl would have been in there, but he just signed. Of course, Crosby could be in there. If he doesn't sign, I don't see him going to Anaheim. But, there could be some really interesting names. Rantanen's another one in Colorado. I expect, again, most of these guys are going to sign and likely stay where they're at, or maybe a trade will materialize. But I know I said before, if Marner does end up leaving Toronto, I honestly wondered about a team like the Ducks. I mean, I know they're not at the same level of competitiveness that he's used to with the Leafs being a really good regular season team, getting into the playoffs year after year after year, but he could be a big boost for them. So we know that they're trying to move guys like Zegras and Gibson, and obviously trying to dip into some of the other top players around the league that might be available through free agency or trade. So curious to see what the Ducks do attempt next, and certainly would be a whole different looking spot right now in the Western Conference if the Ducks would have been successful, considering Stamkos and Marchessault, both, of course, and both are friends and played together before when Marchessault was in Tampa briefly. But, obviously, you imagine they both end up in Nashville, they both would end up in Anaheim instead. I could have really, given that Pacific Division a jolt with the Ducks there. So we'll see. what Anaheim tries next. According to Jim Matheson, the Oilers have had some discussions with Tony Deangelo. We've heard Deangelo's name brought up as a potential right shot defenseman option for Edmonton to add either as a contract or as a PTO to training camp. According to what he's saying, it sounds like Deangelo's camp reached out to the Oilers trying to gauge their interest and see if they can line up at PTO, and apparently they've rejected that. Apparently they are still considering guys like Kevin Shattenkirk and Justin Schultz. We don't know what they're going to end up doing, of course, but interesting to hear that Tony D has been rejected by the Edmonton Oilers. Saravalli, of course, Frank Saravalli has also made mention not too long ago that he thinks that the Oilers are also considering a pretty substantial trade ahead of training camp, which could shake things up. He didn't really elaborate a lot, but the impression everybody has is it would be for a top 4 defenseman. So we will see where things go, but some interesting updates there on the Oilers front. Elliot Friedman also talked a bit about Jeremy Swayman on the podcast. We know that Swayman is one of the top young RFAs, unsigned right now. Of course, went through arbitration last year. We know all the speculation about what he's looking for. At one point, it was rumored to be $10 million a year. We've heard multiple people now, including Friedman, backing up the story from Ryan Whitney, saying that essentially he's looking for the Charlie McAvoy contract, so about $9.5 million. And nobody, he said, from the Bruins had disputed that with him, so he does think it is true. However, he says that the argument from the Bruins side, kind of what's holding things up, is Swayman's looking at how he's played, looking at all the stats, and saying, okay, like I've been a top, 5 goalie or whatever you want to have. I'm not sure every category, but he's always been a real good one, and feels like, he needs to set the market for the upcoming goalie contracts and get paid what he's valued at. He's seen guys like McAvoy, Pasternak kind of, not really push their limits, but so to speak, kind of push the philosophy, if you will, in Boston to get, healthy paychecks. And it feels like he deserves it as well. And I think he does. But the problem, according to Friedman, is on the Boston side of it, they're looking at it and saying, okay, it's not that we don't believe in you. We clearly do. We just traded former Vezina Trophy winning Linus Ullmark to Ottawa to be able to pay you more money and to make room here for you to be the guy to run the ball on your own instead of having a 1A, 1B scenario. And it's not that they don't believe in him. It's that they haven't seen enough yet for him kind of running with the ball and carrying the workload. Even though Swayman's been around now for a while and has done very, very well, he's still only played 132 NHL games. And they haven't seen him have a year, because he hasn't needed to, where he's been the primary starter, and maybe played 60, 65 games. So they're trying to use that as their leverage to pay him less money, and they would like to see him do that before going to his demand. So I do wonder, is there a chance they end up, saying, okay, we're going to do a short-term deal here? I don't know if that's going to be good. He's not that far away from being an unrestricted free agent, so you have to think that if they do, that's the other option that he might want is, okay, take me right to my earliest potential UFA spot. Like, it just sounds like I understand why they're squeezing him a bit, but I just hope for their sake they get it done, because if they don't, they're going to go from having one of the best goalie tandems in the NHL to, having a relationship with him that could be, impacted and could lead to him maybe departing a lot sooner than he or anybody else would really like to see that happen as well. But I do think the Bruins have an argument, but I think he holds the leverage here, given that the fact that Jonas Korpisalo was now plan B instead of Linus Ullmark. So we will see where things go. As I mentioned, lots of RFA talk around some of the either signed guys that want to trade, or some unsigned players that are, either preferring a trade or it looks like they're heading in that direction. I know one guy to watch is Jacob Pelletier in Calgary. I think it's time, honestly, for a fresh start. I know that the team has gone through a bit of a teardown. They're expected to go through a bit more of one this year. He was a first rounder in 2019. Only appeared in 13 games last year. Year before that, he appeared in 24. He's not putting up a ton of points. I think a fresh start's in order, and I think Calgary could find themselves getting another prospect back of similar age, similar levels of accomplishment that might be a better fit for them. I know obviously there were some guys that I know a couple of years back that the fan base was just screaming for an opportunity for more of a chance to play at the NHL, whether it's Peltier or Phillips, what have you. And some of these guys just haven't really worked out so far. Now, it doesn't mean they won't, and maybe this could be a year Peltier would take a step, but it looks like it's going to be tough, to be honest, for him to really grab a top 6 role, which is, I think, ideally long-term some of these guys need to be in to really thrive. So we'll see, but I do expect with Peltier unsigned in Calgary, I think he's a prime candidate here for a swap and a trade to get a fresh start. Another name to watch, again, same thing, Oliver Wahlstrom. He is signed 1 year, just over $1 million, but they've been shopping him all offseason, so I'm not sure how much discussion there's been around him. Obviously, he's battled a lot of injuries in his young career, whatnot, but he could be a prime candidate too. Maybe Peltier Wahlstrom is a similar enough scenario that maybe those guys could be swapped for each other. I mean, that might be something that works maybe for both sides, hard to say. I know with Nick Robertson, and lots of talk around him obviously being in Toronto. Obviously, lots of Toronto media talking about this scenario. A lot of people are speaking out saying that he'd be crazy to not sign and to miss training camp. He's only going to hurt himself long term. And I don't entirely disagree with that. I mean, he appeared in 56 games last year, put up 14 goals, 27 points, and still had a short leash with coach Sheldon Keefe. And I understand with the changes they've made and the new coach, Craig Berube, a lot of people are assuming that he feels like he's not going to be given enough of a fair shake to play a consistent enough role that he just wants to go somewhere else. And I get that. I wonder if I may have found what I think to be at least a really good trade for a good landing spot for Robertson, as well as a good return for the Leafs that I think would make sense for both sides. And it's the Washington Capitals. I think these teams should consider looking at Nick Robertson for Connor McMichael. Now, McMichael's got more games played under his belt, but you look at last year, Connor McMichael played 80 games, scored 18 goals, 33 points. Well, Robertson scored 14 goals, 27 points, and far less games. So he's just as productive. Now, Connor McMichael in his career has predominantly been a center iceman. Now he's going to be pushed to the wing because of the changes that the Capitals have made this offseason. Of course, they've acquired Pierre-Luc Dubois, who they're going to give every opportunity to be a centerman. So they've got Dylan Strome. Dylan Strome is probably going to play in the top. I would suspect he'll be the one flanking Alex Ovechkin, and probably Tom Wilson. That would be my guess. And then you're probably going to put PLD with newly acquired Andrew Mangiapane, and hard to say who the other winger is going to be. It depends because they have some guys on PTOs like Jacob Verana. It could be, it could be McMichael himself if he stays. But either way, PLD is going to be the number 2 centers. But I suspect Hendricks. I almost called him Max Lapierre, but Hendricks Lapierre likely going to be your number 3 center, and then you get Nick down for your 4 spot. So McMichael is basically, according to Spencer Carberry, of all the guys they have that are centermen, that they felt he makes the most sense to move to the wing. He's a terrific skater, real solid. Like, he's a solid player. And to me, with the Leafs, if you look at the fact that they've got their top 2 centermen pretty well, top 2 lines pretty well intact, McMichael could be somebody who can move up to play wing in the top 6 if you needed him to, but he could, long term, maybe be your 3C. Obviously, right now you're probably gonna. I'm not sure if they're gonna leave Tavares as the 2C or what their plans are. Even if Tavares plays center this year, either as a 2C or maybe they put Domi in that role and they break them up and try to spread the scoring out and put Tavares as the 3C, reduce his ice time a bit. Still, I think within the short term, it makes sense for McMichael could be one of those like that 3C guy. Like I said, he's a natural centerman. He's an Ontario-born kid. Played in the OHL. Put up decent numbers last year. Now he's kind of lost a spot and pushed to the wing. Similar age to Robertson. I honestly think it's a great fit. Another option too, should that not materialize, is you could always look to, we talked before about LA being a fit, and I still think a trade with LA and Arthur Kaliev does make some sense as well. So Kaliev, I think, is a pretty good option, and I wouldn't rule out Vegas either. Vegas actually has maybe not as much depth on the wings as some might think, and if you're looking through their roster, I don't know who they could pry away there, but I mean, you could look to a guy maybe like a Brendan Brisson. That might be an option. Depending on how training camp goes for him, no, maybe he grabs a spot. But, he's obviously been drafted a few years, looking to get himself, a role here if he can. And then they've got enough defensemen. If you look at, you got Pietrangelo, you've got Theodore. I do wonder the future of Shea Theodore. I don't think he's going to be in Vegas long. You get Hannafin, you get Hag and Whitecloud. McNabb is still there. So there's your 6. And you still got Ben Hutton, who can be a 7. So that still leaves guys like Caden Korczak and Lucas Cormier in the minors. Now, Lucas Cormier is a pretty solid puck-moving defenseman. I watched him play a fair bit in junior. He's from New Brunswick, not far from me here, from the Moncton area. So I've seen him play a lot when he was younger, and I think he's going to be a real good puck-moving defenseman. So I do wonder, though, maybe Vegas probably wasn't want to move him. I think Theodore is probably his last year in Vegas. I don't see a Theodore for Robertson trade lining up and making sense. I think maybe Theodore gets moved after the season, or if for some reason things don't go well, it could be a deadline move, but I wouldn't suspect that either. So I would think that, either way, next year, I think Lucas Cormier might have an opportunity to slide into more of a puck-moving defenseman kind of role, with Theodore likely exiting. If Theodore somehow extends and kind of proves me wrong here, then I think that his future in Vegas could be questionable as well. But Korczak's a 6'4", 200-pound right shot defenseman. He could be a guy to add some size and some snarl back there that the Leafs would probably love to have. We know the Leafs are also rumored to be working on an extension for Jake McCabe as well. So depending on how things go there, if they end up signing him, he's been a pretty good fit for them so far. That could be another piece there. But if they don't get him signed, because Timothy Liljegren's also been in the rumor mill too. And adding a guy like Korczak would make Liljegren that much more expendable, because he's a very different type of defenseman and would add you a lot more size. So, at the end of the day, there's lots of different moves here within the RFA world that I think make sense. But with all the talk around Nick Robertson, and I know there's been lots of rumors about where he could go. Everybody seems to be connecting him to the California teams. And for the most part, like I said before, the only one to me that makes sense really is LA. And I think a swap for Kaliev makes sense. But I really think Connor McMichael might be a player to watch in Washington. And the other thing, too, is that the Capitals were in on some other trades in the offseason that never materialized. And McMichael was on the table. I can confirm that 100%. We've got enough things confirmed that after things slowed down in the offseason, that the Washington Capitals were definitely in trade talks around some other top names that where McMichael was on the table. And I believe some of the guys like Natchez were guys that they were considering trying to get over there into Washington. So at the same time, they've already considered it before. They can get a scoring winger. Maybe they prefer McMichael on the wing. I don't know, but he's a natural centerman. They might prefer more of a natural goal-scoring winger with more of a shot, like Robertson has. So, to me, I think it makes sense. I think, in all honesty, if I'm Brad Treliving, I'm calling the Capitals. I think it's a good fit. And if that doesn't work out, I'm looking, like I said, maybe to Vegas for Korczak. I would consider calling Lou Lamoriello for Oliver Wahlstrom, although I think you would want more than Wahlstrom coming back, because I think Robertson's kind of been the better player more recently. I don't know about Calgary and Jacob Pelletier. I think Calgary would have to add a lot more than just that. Pelletier is not established enough to get moved for Robertson, in my opinion. But lots of interesting names out there that all of them could end up moving in some capacity to a new home. Just a matter of will they end up moving for each other. So let me know what you think in today's. So let me know what your thoughts are on all this. So let me know what your thoughts are on all the trade talk and all the stuff we talked about here today. We'll be back tomorrow. Big day tomorrow coming as well. In case you're interested in watching, tomorrow is The funeral service for the Gaudreau brothers and the Flames and Blue Jackets are supposed to be live streaming that on their sites. So look for that if you want to be able to watch the service. And also, if you're a fan of the PWHL, there is big news coming between, I think, 9 and 11 in the morning. It's believed that all of their new team names and probably logos, all that they're going to be having a big reveal tomorrow as well, in case you follow the Women's League as well. So thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.